Look around at every forest, desert, and city on land. Combined, they make up just a tiny fraction of the habitable space on our planet. The oceans actually harbor 99% of all living space on Earth. To see exactly how much water that is, you have to imagine it as a single volume. If you filled a bathtub measuring 685 miles long on each side, you would finally match the scale of the world's oceans. But volume is only half the story. To understand the depths involved, we have to take the highest point on land, the 29,029-foot summit of Mount Everest, and drop it completely underwater. If you stood on that submerged peak, you wouldn't be anywhere near the bottom. You would still have more than a solid mile of water between you and the deepest point in the ocean. To grasp how that much water changes the rules of survival, we have to leave the surface and make a literal descent into an increasingly hostile world. The journey begins in the sunlit zone. Just 330 feet below the waves is the typical hunting ground for blue whales, the largest animals on the planet. Dropping down to 700 feet, we reach a historical milestone. This is the depth where the USS Triton became the first submarine to circumnavigate the globe in 1960. Slightly further down, at 831 feet, we reach the limit of unassisted human endurance, the deepest freedive ever recorded. At this depth, the pressure is 26 times greater than at the surface. It is a physical force strong enough to crush human lungs. Environments that would destroy human lungs are home to thousands of species living just a few hundred feet deeper. At 2,400 feet, we enter the danger zone for modern nuclear attack submarines. Any deeper, and the water pressure would cause the steel hulls to implode. We have now dropped far enough to completely swallow the world's tallest building. The tip of the Burj Khalifa would only reach 2,722 feet below the surface. By 3,280 feet, we cross a permanent threshold. We've entered the midnight zone, where the final, faint rays of sunlight fade out into pitch black. Surviving here requires existing without solar energy. From this point on, the rules of biology and engineering are dictated entirely by darkness and pressure. Even in total darkness at 7,500 feet, life finds a way. Swarms of eyeless shrimp thrive in near-freezing water right next to scalding 800-degree Fahrenheit underwater volcanoes. Marine mammals also reach these depths. The Cuvier's beaked whale has been recorded reaching 9,816 feet, the deepest dive ever recorded for a mammal. At 12,500 feet, the pressure is 378 times greater than at the surface. This is where the rusted bow of the RMS Titanic has rested since 1912. This depth is a permanent graveyard for human engineering failures, yet it is simultaneously a habitat for specialized biology like the Dumbo octopus and the fangtooth. Falling to 20,000 feet brings us into the Hadal Zone. This area is reserved exclusively for the ocean's deepest trenches. To see the scale of these trenches, imagine tipping Mount Everest straight into the Mariana Trench. Even with its peak submerged, a massive gap remains between the mountain's summit and the true bottom of the trench. We hit the absolute bottom at Challenger Deep, 35,797 feet below the surface, first reached in 1960 by oceanographer Jacques Piccard and Lieutenant Don Walsh. It took decades for a human to return. In 2012, director James Cameron descended to 35,756 feet in the Deep Sea Challenger mission. While human engineering can briefly touch the deepest spot on the planet, these missions are fleeting visits to a territory that remains mostly uncharted. After reaching the bottom, scientists sent unmanned submersibles like Kaiko to explore the seafloor, where they collected over 350 species between 1995 and 2003. Touching the bottom doesn't mean we have cataloged the surrounding volume. Scientists estimate thousands of species still thrive undiscovered in the surrounding darkness. This chart shows the reality of our exploration. Despite these records, we have only explored between 5 and 10% of Earth's oceans. The deep ocean isn't just a series of depth records to be broken. It is the largest and most vibrant uncharted frontier remaining on our planet.